Greetings, gamers. Welcome to the very first episode of a podcast series that I am putting on my channel with some of my friends, and the first guest appearance is Luffyzilla.
Hello.
Howdy
Thanks
do.
for having me. Thanks for having me on, Gamer Man.
Of course, always an awesome time to have you on the channel, as well as just, being able to share thoughts and opinions about certain things. Obviously, today it's going to be a little bit of a different experience than other things we've done on the channel and will do on the channel because we're going to be talking speculatively about a game. So, first and foremost, we're going to be prefacing this video with that it is going to be all about Pokemon Legends, Legends Arceus, and Legends ZA. At the time of this recording and at the time of the release of this video, Legends ZA is still several months out, and it's looking like it's going to be a good game. I absolutely loved Legends Arceus, and I know that Luffy over here does also love Legends Arceus. So I definitely wanted to talk about our likes, our dislikes, our hopes, and our fears about like what's going on between the two. Like, how are they going to deal with Legends ZA when they've dealt with Legends Arceus? And Legends Arceus was a pretty fantastically made game. Not perfect, but pretty fantastically made game.
Yeah, I second everything you just said. I'm very excited for Legend ZA. I'm actually more excited for ZA than I am for Gen 10. Uh, and I love Legends Arceus is my favorite Switch Pokemon game.
Yes. Legends Arceus is my favorite Switch Pokemon game too. Still can't say that it's like my favorite of all time, but I definitely think it's up there, maybe top five favorite Pokemon games because Legends Arceus just did a lot of things that we were really, really wanting the series to go and do for decades, pretty much since it came out. And of course, back when it came out, there was a lot of hardware and software limitations that made it impossible for them to do some of the things that they wanted to do. But they finally came around to doing it. The problem is then they backtracked. One of the reasons why I have fears going into Legends ZA is that Scarlet and Violet came out after Legends Arceus, and though it had some interesting things implemented into it itself, the game itself is kind of like it's one of those situations where it's like two steps forward, 10 steps backward.
Yeah, as someone who put probably, I don't know, 2 hours into Pokemon Violet and then said, I hate this game, and, uh, and got a refund, so I didn't really like that game, clearly. A lot of the changes that they made from Legends Arceus that should have been no-brainer things to keep. For example, to be able to freely catch Pokemon just by sneaking up on them and chucking a Pokeball at them. Why was that not carried over? I will never know.
Yeah, freely catching Pokemon is probably the most important fundamental change in Pokemon history, and it should definitely be a feature going forward. It should not be something that's stuck behind the Legends games because they like to treat the Legends games as they're kind of like in the middle between mainline games and spin-off games. They're still kind of mainline, but they're still kind of spin-offs. It's very weird because the way I kind of see it is that the only time in history where a game has done this is the Coliseum and XD games, where they were kind of mainline, kind of spin-offs. And why I say that is because even though sure, none of their story kind of corroborates with the rest of the series, usually or typically. The problem is that all of the competitive battling in the day, even like in VGC tournaments and stuff like that, as well as like being able to trade and so on and so forth, all of that was done through Coliseum and XD. And then there were things you could only get in those games during Gen 3. So to call them purely spin-offs is kind of a bit of a a weird and wild take to me. And it's kind of the same thing with Legends Arceus, is I don't think that it's really a spin-off. I don't really care if they classify it as that. I think it's somewhere in between. Because of just the way that, again, you can trade with Pokemon Home and you can trade with other games, but then you also can't take in Pokemon that don't exist in Arceus. So it's just a very weird situation. And for them to bring in such a very cool function that's not at all mainline, right? Being able to catch Pokemon in the wild without having to battle them is just so important. I don't think you should ever have to battle Pokemon to catch them. I think it should be like an option. If you want to fight a Pokemon to catch a Pokemon, then go fight a Pokemon to catch that Pokemon. But otherwise, like I can just throw it. Maybe certain static encounters or bosses should stay, fights, but other than that, it's just weird that they backtrack on that in Scarlet and Violet.
Well, yeah, and even like what you just said with the boss, I mean, they do that in Legends Arceus. Like the Manaphy side mission is Manaphy and Fion. They all have uh like force fields around them, so you have to throw harder objects, and to a certain extent, you do have to battle them at least a little in order to be able to catch them. And with actually all the, I think the Thundurus, Landorus, the those guys, you got to it's the same thing where they're traveling around. They have the little force field around them. So I think that they could have done that. It's just so weird to me because getting Legends Arceus, I was like, oh, this is going to be the game that they're kind of just teasing. Like, oh, here's some things that we're going to add into Generation 9. These are the things we're going to add into Generation 9. This is just the testing game for that. And then you go to Generation 9, and it's just like, where are all these features at?
It's kind of crazy because I think everybody had that opinion that Legends Arceus was a testing grounds. Like they were basically saying, "Oh, this isn't mainline," just to get away from the fact that like it has to follow a certain formula because they're stuck in a rut. The problem with Pokemon is the same problem with like Call of Duty, for instance. They've been stuck in a rut, and the only thing that they innovate on is ways to take your money, and that's pretty much all that's going on here is like how do we get more money. The most the biggest publishers and the biggest companies and the biggest media franchises on earth, how do we get more money? This is why people hate corporations and hate capitalism, even though it's kind of a very ignorant opinion to hate either, because not all of them are just like that. But the issue is like we have the coolest catching mechanic in the game. That's the point here. The coolest catching mechanic we've ever seen in Pokemon, and they're just like, you know what, Scarlet and Violet, we're going back to normal. We're going back to old school. Why did we want an open world video game, an open world Pokemon? However loosely you can use the term open world, and and not have that catching style. Crazy.
And also, I actually like the way that Legends Arceus handled the quote unquote open world a lot more than how Scarlet and Violet handled the open world.
Yes.
Because, at least in Legends Arceus, my game wasn't constantly running at 5 frames a second.
I just love the windmill. The windmill in the distance. Such a beautiful sight. 1 frame a second.
1 frame, and all the pop in and the Pokemon battles where they put it on the actual terrain instead of shifting to a battle screen. So, you just have Pokemon and people just popping in and out of the battle. Wonderful times, wonderful times.
I
But let's not talk too negatively about Scarlet and Violet. We're here to talk about Legends Arceus and ZA. So let's try to be more positive, as
yeah,
positive as we can be.
yeah, let's be as positive as we can be. The only reason why I even brought that stuff up is just because I have a little bit of fear. Like, are they going to backtrack with ZA? I really hope that they don't, and I really hope that they do move forward with better mechanics. I'm so glad they're bringing stuff back that just needed to be brought back. And from what I can see, from what I can tell, or what I've heard from like leaks and rumors, you are capable of catching Pokemon like you were in Legends Arceus, or yeah, Legends Arceus. And I
Oh,
think. I think that's very good.
Yeah, they showed some of that off in some of the trailers that you could do that. They also updated the catching mechanics in ZA a little bit as well, where even after you faint a Pokemon, it still gives you a few seconds to actually be able to catch it.
I think it's good. I wonder what they're gonna do with stuff like they're probably just doing that to simplify the mechanics and make it a bit more in line with what their current philosophy is. Because their current philosophy in Pokemon is to make the games easier. It's pretty obvious that that's the case, and I'm not totally opposed to that. Um, but it also means that there's like moves and stuff that you're gonna do towards a Pokemon, like for instance, paralyzing the Pokemon or using like False Swipe to get them down to 1 HP, because False Swipe can never KO, so it's a move you can continuously use if you have nothing else you can do. You need to wait for like your timer ball, you need to wait for this, that, or the other. They're changing the mechanics of the game, and again, it's not something I'm opposed to, but it is like a different shift. I remember the struggles of having to catch Pokemon back in Gen 3, and what you had to do, you had to paralyze, sleep, burn that sucker.
And cry a little. You had to cry a little as well.
Yeah, you did. You basically had to find a corner and cry in it.
Basically, I still remember the good old days in Gen 1 in the Safari Zone, where you just prayed it worked.
You just prayed it worked. And then
You
Gen
would be like, "Oh
2,
my god, oh my gosh, a Chansey and a Clefairy. Oh, this is the rarest Pokemon to find here." And then you throw the rock to like anger it, and then it runs away. And then you just sob in the corner for a few hours.
and then Gen 2 was like, you know what we got? We've got roaming legendaries.
Yes, yes,
My favorite.
my favorite, of course.
Ever
Legends Arceus also had roaming legendaries, but it was done a million times better. So I'll give them that.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with that. When it comes to the catching mechanics of Arceus, one of the things that I really hope that they bring over to ZA is the different kinds of Pokeballs. Because I don't know about you or anybody else, man, but the different kinds of Pokeballs were so cool. Like, for instance, when you threw a heavy ball, it actually didn't go anywhere because it's a heavy ball. But it's also made for, like catching bigger Pokemon. And if you got like a stealth catch, so if you were able to sneak up behind a Pokemon with the heavy ball, it had a way better multiplier than anything else in the game.
hmm
And I thought that stuff was so cool.
and the reverse, I think they were called the feather balls, the
Yes.
ones that like go flying. I loved you'd be on top of a mountain and you just see a Pokemon you want at like the way bottom of the mountain, and you're just like, let's see if this works, and you just chuck it at the thing and you catch it, and you're like, wow, that saved me a trip down the mountain.
That was so cool. Just thinking about it, like going back and playing Gen 3, you're not catching a Pokemon 10 million miles away from you, but you're like, I see that Pokemon down the mountain. He's even across the river a bit. Ha, ha, this is a no-brainer. Wing ball. Goodbye. Feather ball.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like they're probably going to have more modernized versions of the Pokeballs, because this is supposed to be a sequel to X and Y. So I feel we're probably going to get that. We probably will still get like a heavy ball and a feather ball, but hopefully we have way more variety. I hope they bring in dusk balls. I hope they bring in, whatever, quick ball, timer balls. I hope they bring all of them in.
I think that would be really awesome to see like the updated Pokeballs, because that's the problem with Arceus, is that Arceus did have some of the modern balls, but most of them weren't. They were like new stuff, which is cool. Definitely not complaining about seeing new stuff, but it would be cool to see the implementation also of stuff like dusk balls and like quick balls, because I think those are pretty much the most popular, or at least in my case, man, when I was doing Sword and Shields Pokédex, that's pretty much all I threw was quick balls and dusk balls.
Yeah. Quick balls are the best. Quick balls are absolutely your best friend against legendaries that you don't want to deal with. Just save right in front of them, And if it fails, you just reset the game.
Yeah, it's pretty darn simple. It made like the whole process just way better for a bunch of different Pokemon because you just throw the ball and it immediately turn one 4 times timer and you're just like, ha, I got you. You're done. You're gone.
Let's go back. Let's go back here and think about when we first got the game. Both of us. I
Okay.
think I actually played it before you by a few days. Uh,
Yes.
what was your initial reaction to the game, Legends Arceus, when you first booted it in your Switch and started playing it?
So this is going to sound a little bit funny, but my initial reactions to Legends Arceus was, where is this going? I'm this boy who's being like transported back in time from a voice or something that was going on. I thought the intro was kind of a bit weird, but once I got into you know, the old world feel of Hisui, I was like, man, this is actually really cool. The art style looks really cool. And everybody knew at that point. Everybody knew at that point that, we were going to be catching differently and there was going to be a different style of gameplay. And I was super excited for that. I don't think before that time I can recall me being as stoked for Pokemon. Maybe for like Coliseum and XD when they first came out, but we're talking like that's a hard thing to gauge because that was like 20 years ago. Um, Whereas like Legends Arceus is pretty fresh in my mind still, even to this day. And I still had that thought of like, wow, it was somehow nostalgic in a weird way. It was somehow nostalgic, but also it felt fresh and brand new. And it was one of those feelings that you don't get with every game, which is really cool.
Yeah, I want to go off of your nostalgia point a little bit because in my how I always looked at it is when you started catching the Pokemon, that's how you always envisioned as a kid when you were playing the old school games, how you were catching the Pokemon in like your head, like you're using your imagination. And then now you don't have to imagine it. You're actually going up, you're chucking a Pokeball while hiding in the tall, like that's always tall grass, and that's how you catch them now. And so that's where I think, I don't know if that's what you were implying, but that's like what I was going to say is like it does bring you back to a nostalgia feel about going off of my imagination of like I remember the first time I ran into what was the first Pokemon I ran into? Probably a Pidgey. And I was like, oh man, I just picture in my brain like I'm sneaking up on this Pidgey in Gen 1 and I chuck a Pokeball at it and I catch it. Yeah. But obviously, on the Game Boy, the original Game Boy Color, the tech wasn't there to do that. So you had to kind of fill in the blanks yourself, but now you don't have to.
Yes. So my reason for feeling nostalgic was actually something very similar. Back when I was a kid, I never had like that same feeling that you did about like imagining how I would catch the Pokemon, but it was what I had instead when I was a kid was I imagined what it would be like if I had Pokemon, like in real life, and like how they could
Hmm.
help me in real life and stuff like that. And like the idea of, how it would be more realistic. The game feels more realistic, whereas the old school RPGs of Pokemon don't feel as realistic because you're jumping into tall grass. You never see the Pokemon. It pops up in like an RPG encounter, and then you have to fight it, then catch it, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Whereas like Arceus just it cuts all of the fat out of that, and it makes it feel more real. And
Hmm.
and that's why it gave me that nostalgic feeling. So I could definitely see your reason. For me, I really love the fact that like it didn't feel like I was playing a video game so much as more like a simulation of like what would happen if this was real, if Pokemon was real, if catching them was real. And this is something that I've been over with several friends in the past as of late, is that when I was a kid, I had a huge imagination, and I still do have a pretty big imagination. It's not like I can't imagine things. But for me, how I get my entertainment is I want to interact with my entertainment.
Hmm.
So when several of my friends were like, "Hey, Gamer Man, why don't you jump on like D&D with us?" And I would be like, "Well, I I would do that. I would still do that. I would still have fun with you. But one of the things that killed D&D for me, for instance, was getting into things like Fire Emblem and getting into things like Pokemon and being able to actually play the stuff and interact with it rather than just like reading stats off a paper and rolling a die. And stuff like that really changed it for me. Is where like some people could say I'm spoiled in that sense because some people would rather the imagination kind of sense of that, but I would rather just see it and feel it. So when Legends Arceus gave us the ability to catch Pokemon in that way or battle in the ways that it does, and then like even just everything it does cumulatively with the whole catching mechanics and how it makes it feel more realistic, it it kind of lent itself to that nostalgic feeling that I had back in the day of like, what if I had real Pokemon, or how would Pokemon actually do in real life, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot, you know. And people that would say the imagination thing, I mean, if you really want to use your imagination that badly, go to a movie and just close your eyes. Uh, and then just imagine the movie. It's not going to be as good. Uh,
It's
but I
not.
understand the point. But yeah, you know, for me, it's just more about like that inner child in me got to like come out and go. This is the Pokemon game I've wanted since I first got Pokemon Blue. This is what I always pictured Pokemon would be. That's
Yes.
why I don't care that Pokemon has the best graphics. They're fun. At least, you know, well, Legends Arceus is fun. It's fun. It's cool. It's what I've always wanted a Pokemon. Somewhat open world where I can freely just catch Pokemon. The Pokemon, if they see you, they can attack you or they could flee from you. The fact that then you can sneak up on Pokemon and they'll be sleeping. The fact that the Pokemon travel together in like groups, or the fact that baby Pokemon, a lot of them are only available at like dawn, like at the beginning of the day, but then outside of that, you never see them. Like, I just love the fact that the Pokemon almost have like routines, and I just think it
Yes.
makes it so much more engaging of a game.
Yes, the routines. So the routines about the Pokemon and then like the environmental differences with Pokemon and how they interact with the environment is it's so cool. I think that that's something that needs to be more and more innovated on. I really, like you said, I really don't care about the graphics of Pokemon. I think graphics are extremely subjective. I know a lot of people who don't like pixelated graphics of like the Super Nintendo era. That's like my favorite era of video gaming. So when somebody tells me that, I'm like, you're kind of crazy. This is cool. I like that. I enjoy that. And a lot of people don't like that, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine because we all have different graphical taste, different artistic taste. What I want is good art design in a game, and Legends Arceus has very good art design, and let alone that fact, it's not only in the art design, it's also in like the Pokemon themselves being able to do things that you would never expect them to do. Like again, being able to see Pokemon sleeping or moving in herds and stuff like that. You never saw that in something like Gen 3. You can't see that because all the Pokemon are in the grass and you have to hit a random encounter to see them. So this is something that I want Pokemon to expound upon. I want Pokemon to get to the point where everything in the wild has like a natural response. They're doing something. They have not only a routine, but they have like daily activities. They have maybe even like random activities, so on and so forth. You can catch them eating, you can catch them socializing, you could even catch them battling. Maybe you get to like a herd of Taurus, and the Taurus are like, I'm the alpha male. And the other one's like, no, I'm the alpha male. And then they just start whooping each other for no reason. I think that stuff like that could really go a long way, making Pokemon feel more real.
Yeah, so if I could, there's actually a few examples that I remember from when playing Legends Arceus of the wild actually being like really well done. Is I remember coming upon a group of Machops, and yeah, I think it was Machops, And I remember they kept running up to me, and I was like, oh, I don't want to battle them. But they would stop right in front of me, and I'm like, oh, it just stopped. And then it would just start flexing, like literally just showing off its muscles, like, yeah, look at me, I'm buff. And I just thought that was because that's something a Machop or a Machoke or a Machamp would do, and I feel in real life. They just want to show off their gains, you know. They don't care about battling or anything. They just want to go, hey, look how ripped I am. But another
Yes.
one that I thought was a lot cooler was Blissey is super hard to find in the wild, and usually when you see a Blissey, it'll run away. But I remember, I think I was trying to actually catch the Blissey, and I fell down a mountain and I almost died. My character, or sorry, went blank. Sorry, passed out. But the Blissey actually came over and healed me, and then ran and then disappeared.
I never saw that with Blissey. That's insanely cool.
But that's something that those Pokemon do is they're nurturing. You know, in the anime, they're always working at the Pokemon or Chansey's, but Blissey evolves from Chansey. But yeah, they're always working in the Pokemon Center. They're known to be caring and nurturing Pokemon. So they see your character is hurt, they heal you, and then then they're like, "Oh, okay, you're fine. Okay, I'm leaving now."
I'm
But
leaving
like
now.
stuff, well, I don't want to get caught. But stuff like that is so cool. Or like when I caught a Wurmple, it was just a little Wurmple just sleeping in the grass, and I was like, "Well, Wurmple," and I chuck a Pokeball at your face. You're mine now.
You're mine now. Go into the potential PC that breaks all continuity.
Yeah.
I don't remember how what they called the storage system for your Pokemon in that game. I can't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing the Machops do that. I don't remember. I think even Machokes did that too. I love that because it really just it showed off what they wanted to do. These Pokemon, they had like their own personality. Their personality isn't I'm gonna beat you up with these muscles. No, it's I'm gonna show you what I have got. The guns that I've got going
It's
on.
all yeah, it's almost like they're like, "Hey, I think you want this Machop. Look at my muscles. Catch me if you can."
I like that. That's a really cool nod. I never knew that about Chansey or Blissey being able to just like go up to you and heal you if you took some kind of damage because you can take damage in Legends Arceus, which
Yep.
is another thing that absolutely needs to come back. And the only time in Pokemon history where that was even hinted at was in Colosseum. So so it's like it took them 20 years to bring that into the series. I really hope we don't have to wait another 20 for
Can
that return.
can Pokemon attack you in Scarlet and Violet?
I don't know. They can like gesture at you like they're going to, but the issue is they don't ever attack you. They just run after you and then you
Oh, and
get
then
into a battle.
initiate a battle. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Why would you take out that feature? That is such a cool thing. It adds so much more stakes to your character than just like you could be like, oh wow, I'm in this new area I've never been in, and then just out of nowhere, like a golem just self destructs and blows you up, and you're like, well, oh, back to my spawn camp.
You know what's a really good point about that too is that it means that even if you have a team of overpowered Pokemon, you can still faint.
Yeah,
And that not only puts like stakes on your character, but it just puts stakes on the whole issue because if you faint, you go back to the Pokemon Center and then you lose potential progress, or maybe there was something there that you could have caught that you really wanted to catch, and then well, bam, you got taken out by a golem.
you got taken out by a golem or whatever. Um, but yeah, it was just the world was so cool to explore. Something a lot of newer Pokemon games don't really have is you actually explore things and you can go find cool items and cool legendaries and all that. I thought all that was so neat.
I think that Legends Arceus struck a really good balance of exploration whilst also not like totally hampering your exploration because this is one of my problems, right? I really like the old school games even with their HMs, and it's not because I like HMs. I actually don't like them because of the way they're implemented. The way they're implemented is you have to go into your party, you have to use it, blah blah blah, and it's every single time. It's not automatic. If once you got an HM, it was automatic on the Pokemon where you only had to like push A up to whatever it was, then I think I would like them more and I would still excuse them in modern Pokemon. But the issue is the reason why I liked them back in the day is because back in the day, exploration required them and exploration was more in depth. Whereas in the past several games, exploration pretty much doesn't exist. But Legends Arceus solved that by having multiple different areas that you couldn't get to at first. You had to unlock them. And then in each area that you unlocked a different ability with one of your Pokemon. Like, for instance, being able to ride Deer, or swim on Basculegion, or fly with Braviary. And these allowed you to go back into the previous regions and check out what you missed, which is basically what HMs did. So they finally solved that. And I think that that's the way that Pokemon should go, especially if they're going to continue to nix HMs, because there has to be some limit to exploration. But it needs to be believable and it also needs to be useful. It's why I think Pokemon shouldn't go to open world, but should stick with more like open zones. Like the
Hmm.
zones are open, but each zone is separate.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think they could probably expand on it instead of just like, oh, here's this random Pokemon that's going to help you. I just feel like, and I know this would probably take a lot of effort on Game Freak's part, but for example, if you just have a Pokemon that's a flying type, you should just be able to fly it. Like it
Yes.
should just be boom, automatic. Or if you're trying to get a rock out of your way, okay, do I have any rock type or fighting type Pokemon? Oh, I do. Okay, they could break it. Like anything like that. It shouldn't be necessarily like a move. It should just be this Pokemon can clearly do this because this is what it does.
Yes, that's the reason why HMs are like I don't like the way that they were implemented back in the day. I like them for the overall design of gatekeeping exploration so that you have to find something, you can explore, you can and then they can hide things behind certain exploration. But I never liked how it was implemented in the sense that it was a permanent move slot, which is annoying, and then it was also not something that was an automatic. So even if you had it on your team, you still had to activate it somehow, either by going into your party and then picking the move or whatever. It wasn't something that was as accessible. And that's the thing is I think that that's a great way to do it. Of course, it would probably take a lot of effort on Game Freak's part, but they did do this before. And Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, you could fly on any Pokemon that could fly and carry you and had wings. Just like you could surf on any Pokemon that could carry you and surf. So there were Pokemon that were exceptions to this. So if the Pokemon was too small to carry you, obviously it couldn't. You couldn't fly with that Pokemon. Um, and if the,
Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
unacceptable.
I want a Pidgey to carry me around everywhere. I just want to be dangling from its feet as it's sweating to death trying to carry me.
See, in that case, what I would do is I would just let all of the other Pokemon I have in my Pokeballs out of their balls while Pidgey was carrying me.
You have to carry us all now, Pidgey.
Become stronger, Pidgey, or else.
So, okay, so we start the game. We start the game. You know, we meet Professor Laventon after we get transported through time by Arceus.
Yes.
What starter did you pick?
So the starter I picked was Rowlet, and the reason why I picked him was because I thought the final form of the Decidueye looked really cool. It actually had nothing to do with like picking a grass type over other types because I liked all of the starters' final forms in the Hisui. I eventually ended up having them all, but Rowlet was the one that I did pick.
I went with Cyndaquil because I just, you know, I know some people don't like doing this, but before any Pokemon game, I want to know every single Pokemon that's going to be in the game. And I knew beforehand that all the starters were going to get regional variants for their final evolution, and I was like, oh man, what's Typhlosion's going to be? And then I saw it was Fire Ghost, and I'm like, I'm in. So I picked Cyndaquil.
Yes. So, grand scheme of things, like in hindsight view, I probably would have picked Cyndaquil. Um, I probably should have picked Cyndaquil because I think he's actually the best one of the three. Um, all of them are good. You know, Hisui and Samurott and Decidueye do have their niches. Like, for instance, Triple Arrows is the signature move of Decidueye, and it's probably the strongest of the three signature moves. It doesn't have the most, I want to say, utility to it. That would be Ceaseless Edge on Samurott. But Triple Arrows is a 50 base power move, 100 accuracy, 15 power points. The user delivers an axe kick, then fires 3 arrows. This raises the chance of its future attacks landing critical hits and also lowers the target's defensive stats. So you're nuking your opponent's defense. You're also increasing your critical hit rate. So then later on, you're going to crit, do even more damage, and the Pokemon that you're attacking also has his defenses lowered. So I think that that's a pretty insane combo. That was one of the big reasons why I picked him. But it was more or less because I thought Hisui and Decidueye looked very cool. I liked the whole motif he had going on. He looked like an old samurai going on,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like in the straw hat. He has like the upper
Yep.
cloak on. He's like a Ronin almost, if you will.
Yep. It's funny that he looks like a samurai, but then there's a Pokemon that's a starter called Samurott that doesn't really look like a samurai, but you know.
They tried making Samurott look like he was like a battle ready samurai, like a shogun, and it somewhat gets across, but then it also kind of doesn't because I don't know, his headdress still looks too much like a shell, and
Yeah.
I,
Samurott just kind of looks the same to me, outside of he's just darker colors
yeah, he's just
and
darker
some other.
color.
While Typhlosion looks the same, but when those like ghost tentacles or aura comes out of his neck, it looks so cool.
Yeah, I think that that's so cool. Like the ethereal fire comes out of him, and Fire Ghost is just such a interesting combination of attacking types because I mean fire is underrated as a defensive type because a lot of people think well water, ground, rock those are pretty great offensive types and they destroy fire. Fire has a lot of resistances. It has more than most types, which is very surprising. And then with ghosts immunities, you've got some like defensive qualities there, but it's also extremely offensive. There is nothing in the game that Fire and Ghost do not hit for at least neutral. So that means that Typhlosion is probably like your best pick there. And being Ghost type, spoiler alert, actually helps you for some of the boss fights later in the game.
Um, yeah, it's such a good type combination that they did it again in Gen 9
They did, and
for
it's
Skeledirge.
see, I was forgetting who they did it for. That's how that's how fancy that was. Skeledirge is not even a bad Pokemon either, so that's an
I
interesting
think
thought.
he looks really cool to me, but I didn't get that far. So, but yeah, I love Typhlosion. I liked that they did that with the starters. It was something to make it different because they're like, hey, this game we're gonna bring in 3 starters from different regions,
Three
and
different
what did
regions.
3 different regions? What did you think about that?
I thought that that was a really good move on their part because what it did was it allowed for three separate regions to be shown off there, and rather than making new Pokemon, because here's the crazy thing about it, we're going back in time and revisiting Sinnoh, right?
Hmm.
Which is retroactively Sinnoh. It was Hisui. So the issue is that for them to have new starters, it didn't make as much sense as for them to have variants on the starters. Like, for instance, if this old Samurott and this old Rowlet or Decidueye, so on and so forth, if these old Pokemon are kind of like extinct or passed by now because they were there back in the day, but they're not there now. I think that's very cool, a very cool motif. My only problem with the whole starter situation actually has to go with Legends ZA.
What could possibly be the problem with those starters?
Two of them are from Gen 2 and one is from Gen 5. And it makes zero sense. Zero sense.
And the crazy part about it is they could have used Piplup because he turns into Empoleon, and they're into Kalos, which is based on France. Snivy, who Superior, I think, is the final evolution for that one. Their names are French, so they could have used them. I mean, I'm happy to see Totodile back. I love Totodile, but like, it is so weird that they picked Chikorita and Totodile. like,
I think Chikorita kind of deserves some spotlight. I will say because Chikorita is Meganium is one of the worst starter Pokemon of all time. Literally. Meganium is terrible in his home games, terrible in the remakes of his home games, and never has gotten any kind of clout anywhere. And I really think that ZA could change that, especially since there's obviously no way that these starters aren't getting megas. So when they get megas, those megas have to be like somewhat competent. If Meganium's mega is competent, if it does something pretty massive for Meganium, I think that would be pretty great. The problem is like I've stated before, in conversation with you, is that megas are kind of like a band-aid solution for bad Pokemon. And the reason
right.
why that is because if a game doesn't include megas, then there is no more solution for that bad Pokemon. And that's why I both like and don't like megas at the same time. Because some Pokemon that really do need like an evolved form, for instance, Mawile and Sableye, they got mega forms, which are actually insanely good, but how many games have they been in?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of put themselves into a bit of a corner because how do you explain, like, oh, it has an evolution, but like, would the evolution then get that mega evolution, or like, how would that work if they did do something like that?
Yeah, I've seen discussion about how they could still give these Pokemon evolutions and then still have mega evolutions that were varied or different from their evolutions. I think that that's kind of still weird, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense for them to have like a branching evolution, but one's a mega. And then it would not make sense. It just would not make sense at all for a Pokemon to get an evolution and then to also be able to mega evolve into the same mega evolution as the other form, like the previous form. Um, because when most Pokemon evolve, they get more stats, right? So
Yeah.
the issue with Mega Evolution is Mega Evolution just gives you a flat 100 base stat total increase, regardless of which Pokemon. And then sometimes they rebalance the stats in the sense of like Mega Beedrill. Mega Beedrill became extremely powerful, extremely fast, and would have never gotten that strong or fast with just 100 base stat given to it. But they rebalance some of its stats to accomplish this, and I think that's pretty cool. But if Beedrill was to somehow get like an evolution, which they've never done a fourth before, but let's just say, he somehow got an evolution, it wouldn't make as much sense because let's say he got a 50 stat base stat total buff in that evolution, and then you mega evolve that, you're only getting a 50. Whereas if you mega evolve a Beedrill, you're getting a 50 or a 100. So it's kind of really strange. They definitely did paint themselves in a corner with this, and it's why, in my humble opinion, I think Mega Evolution needs to stay around. Maybe it doesn't need to be in every game, and maybe not every Mega should be in every game or whatever. I'm not saying that, but it does need to stick around in at least some capacity. Even if it means like, sure, they don't do it in the mainline games because they want to do whatever stupid crystalline gimmick that they're going to do this game. Um, but at least in like the Legends games or the spin-off games or this, that, or the other, that they could still have Mega persist because otherwise these Pokemon they just eventually fall into obscurity.
Yep. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. We've had this conversation off of the podcast. I'm going to be more on the hopeful side that they are going to keep not legendaries, mega evolutions going forward. I'm going to be on the optimistic side about this because I think eventually they're just going to run out of gimmicks. I mean, their last gimmick was, hey, we're going to put funny hats on the Pokemon that change their typing. They're clearly running out of ideas for gimmicks.
I think I think Game Freak is missing the forest for the trees, right? And the reason why I say this is because they've got themselves stuck in a situation where they think they have to add a gimmick per generation. And some people say, well, this is kind of a newer concept. It's actually kind of not. Ever since Gen 2, there has been something added to each generation that has fundamentally changed something about the game. The only game that's not really so much like that is Gen 5. They did add the gems, which the gems are extremely powerful for their use, but it doesn't fundamentally change the game. And they did add hidden abilities, I suppose, that were more accessible in Gen 5. So I guess you could say
Mhm.
that that's kind of a thing. But in Gen 2, they added held items. In Gen 3, they added abilities. In Gen 4, they had the physical special split. In Gen 5, like I said, they had the gems and then easier access to hidden abilities. Gen 6, they had megas. Gen 7, they had Z moves. Gen 8, they had good old Dynamax and Gigantamax. Gen 9, they had terrestrialization. So my problem is like notice the difference in the gimmicks. Up until Gen 6, the gimmicks were gameplay mechanics being changed.
Right.
Whereas Gen 6 and onward are like battle mechanics that are very temporary. They're kind of like instant gratification. They feel like instant gratification to me. Whereas the other, old ones were more or less like for the long run. And I really think that the ones that change some mechanics of the game, they're just better. I would rather we just stop with this, right? We need to stop with this. If I never see another terrestrialization or Gigantamax type of gimmick again, I would be pretty happy in a mainline Pokemon game.
Yeah, because I was actually going to bring that up to you is the fact that from Gen 2 to like Gen 4 in a way is everything was something that would benefit future games. Like, oh, we're going to add held items. Okay, now look at how held items were back then versus how they are now. There's almost like a whole meta around held items nowadays. That's like a whole thing. Or, the physical special split. I mean, you can't go back. You can never go back from that. That's something that has to stay the way it is. And then, even with Gen 3 adding double battles and stuff, double battles are like the most fun way to play Pokemon, in my opinion. So,
Yep.
and so when you add something that's just like, we're just going to paint over this with, oh, this Pokemon can get a new form. And the reason Mega Evolutions, in my eyes, work while the other ones don't work as well is the Megas are really easy to obtain. You find their Mega Stone doing whatever nonsense. Half the time you just get them. And then, oh, look, I can Mega Evolve my Lucario or Mega Evolve Charizard. Whereas, oh, you want a Gigantamax Charizard? Well, you gotta wait till pretty much the post game, and then there's this one special area that you have like a 5% chance of getting it in a max raid den. Like that's not fun. Or
That
not
it.
Charizard. Well, even okay, let's say Charizard. Charizard, you get a Charmander post game. After you beat the game, you get a Charmander that can evolve into a G Max Charizard. And it's like, what good is this?
Yeah, what use is this? I do agree with gatekeeping some of the Megastones behind the post game. Especially if like let's say we had um ZA, for instance, is all about Kalos. If they wanted, they could easily put all of the Kalos um they could put all of the Kalos mega evolutions in the game, and then the post game could have like the non Kalos. And I'm not saying that they should do this, but I could see it going like a running theme for later
Hmm.
gens to kind of like accentuate. I don't think that they should do this for ZA at all. And the reason why is because ZA is the return of megas, the long awaited much beloved return, hopefully much beloved return of megas. So I don't think that they should gatekeep any of the megas behind like the post game, but in later installments they could do this to accentuate the main game and then the primary Pokemon in the actual story, their role in their game, um, with Mega Stones, and then like every other Mega Stone in the game, they could just be like, okay, you can access them all post game, and they shouldn't be random encounters either.
Yeah. Um. So speaking of megas, I know we've talked about this at nauseum, but I'm just gonna, for the listeners, what Pokemon do you want to get a Mega Evolution?
So the obvious answer, and I think everybody at this point, anybody who heard that statement, like that question, is going to think Mega Frygon.
Of course, of course. Flygon deserves a Mega Evolution. Game Freak said, quote unquote, "Oh, we couldn't think of anything for him." Well, you've had time. You better figure it out now.
There's been this running gag between me and Luffy that the game's going to come out and that there's going to be no Mega Flygon, and everybody's going to be like, "Where's Mega Flygon?" And they're going to be like, "We couldn't think of it again."
We, could, we couldn't think of it. But here's Mega Dunsparce.
And we've called him Mega Dun 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 Sparse. Oh my
But
gosh.
I just think Flygon deserves it. I think even though he's already a really good Pokemon, but that's just the thing with Game Freak is they just go, what Pokemon get megas? Oh, good Pokemon. Okay, cool.
So
if Audino can get a Mega Evolution, a Pokemon I never even heard of until I saw that it had a Mega Evolution when I was looking up Mega Evolutions for this video. If that Pokemon can get a Mega Evolution, why can't Flygon?
I think Flygon is the most obvious answer and should definitely get one. And I don't know exactly how they would do it. I was thinking like maybe Bug Dragon or something like that because he is literally a dragonfly or something of that sort. And they could really, honestly, there are so many cool things that they could do with that Pokemon. The fact that they supposedly, quote unquote, couldn't think of it, I don't understand why developers have to lie like this because that's a lie. It's not that they couldn't think of it. It's that they probably ran out of time or something, or budget constraints, or this, that, or the other, or forgot about it. Just tell us
I
the
would have,
truth.
yeah, I would have rather them said like, oh, we just ran out of time. I would have rather them just said that because I'd be like, you know what? Okay, I get
That's
it.
believable.
But like some of these, I'm like, Mega Tyranitar just has giant spikes on him. That's the only thing that's different about Mega Tyranitar. You can't tell me that you couldn't have just gave. I would have been fine if Mega Flygon just had giant spikes on him. I'd be okay with that. Okay, cool. That's a Mega. That's Mega Flygon. Let's go.
One of the big reasons why I'm actually not a big fan of most of the pseudo legendaries or like some of the more powerful Pokemon and their megas in Gen 6 is because take a look at Salamence. Like the dude is literally his wings got merged. Wow. Crazy.
He
Oh
looks
man,
like a crescent. He looks like a crescent moon.
you couldn't think of anything. They couldn't think of anything at all for Flygon, but you know what they did for Salamence? They made his wings combine. Wow. I was just gonna say that for me, there's another obvious, and that is I think that all of Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde should all get megas. If it's only Zygarde, I think that that's a huge miss because the problem is that all three of the legendary are Kalos legendaries, and I just think all of the maybe what it is that Zygarde is the only one that gets a mega, but the other two get like a primal or something like that or whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with that as long as it's something to that akin. But they're not even the Pokemon I really want to see. They're just Pokemon I'm kind of expecting to see. Flygon is like an expectation because it's just an obvious point. When it comes to a Pokemon I want to see though, that's a very hard question. Maybe like this would probably make a lot of people go, "What in the world? Why would you want that? He's already overpowered as it is." But I kind of think Aegislash is the Pokemon I want to see get Mega. And the reason why is because just think there's a lot of really cool potential for a ghost that's possessing a sword and shield to be utilized in some way. Like maybe he mega evolves into like a suit of ghastly armor, like he's just possessed armor with like a sword and shield and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm just like there's potential there that I think is really cool, especially because Aegislash is my favorite Kalos Pokemon.
Yeah, he is really cool. Leon's in Pokemon Sword and Shield made me want to rip my hair out. So he's so I think making him stronger is a bit much. But I mean, like we said, all the Pokemon that get Mega Evolutions are already broken, so it doesn't matter.
So for Aegislash, see the problem is his stance change wouldn't work anymore. His ability wouldn't work. They'd have to change that. So what they could do is fully rebalance his stats and he wouldn't be the same Pokemon, I don't think, in that sense. I actually don't think it's possible that they're going to give him a Mega because of his ability. His ability is so functional and it's so
Yeah.
necessary for like what he's doing that if they were to change that with a Mega, then you would basically have an Aegislash that is kind of useless until he Mega evolves, and vice versa. Like the Mega Evolution would be useless if you're using Aegislash normally. If you have like his normal moves and if you're relying on his normal stuff. So I think that that's not coming. I think people can, settle his fears. None of you have to worry about Mega Aegislash destroying all of Uber's and everything below that. But it's
Now
just an
watch we get
interesting
Mega
thought.
Eight. Now watch we get Mega Aegislash and no Mega Flygon.
And no Mega Flygon.
So obviously, I mean, I think a go-to pick for a lot of people would be the Kalos starters.
Yes.
They should all get megas. Mega Greninja, that would be really cool. Um, for me though, I was doing some digging here. I was doing
Okay.
some digging. This isn't even a Pokemon I necessarily like, but you know, as someone who played Gen 1, they call me a Gen 1er, as the kids would say. Uh, there's a Gen 1 Pokemon that still has not gotten a regional variant. I mean, there's probably a few, but this is the only one that really came to mind for me. That gets no love, no Mega, no nothing. I think Fearow should get a Mega Evolution.
Wow. That's actually a pretty interesting thought. Fira was my favorite of the birds in Gen 1 as well, at least the early birds, because, like, for one, like, you can get a Pidgeot at level 36 or 38. It's one of the two. I think it's 36. And then a Firo evolves to its final form at 20, and it's basically almost the same power level. And I just, even as a kid, I was always like, who would pick Pidgey over Spearow?
And what would be really cool is his name Fearow. It would be cool if he turned into like a flying ghost type or something.
Hmm, that would be definitely something interesting. So instead of
I,
like a flying normal type,
I guess theoretically you could just make him a regional variant. I would be okay with that, I guess. I'm not really big on adding all these regional variants to this game because like this game is supposed to be a sequel to X and Y, so it'd just be weird if all these regional Pokemon that weren't in that game originally just popped up out of nowhere. But I guess if they really wanted to, they could add it as a regional variant of just make Fearow different. But I don't know. I just think it'd be kind of cool for him to get some love
yeah.
of any kind.
So at this current moment, the only game in the entire series that makes sense that it has regional forms is Legends Arceus.
Yeah.
Every other game in the series makes zero sense because why wouldn't we have found this beforehand? Or also like in the term of like Alola. It's literally Gen 7 is a region based on Hawaii, and almost all of the regional variants are ice types. What sense that makes negative sense. Like we're not even talking zero sense. We're talking negative sense here.
Also, the fact that like in some of their cases, actually, no, I guess the ones I want to point out the most about is Sandshrew and Sandslash. Why would they have those names if they're ice types?
Ah, yes. I'm a sand slasher. And you know what's crazy too is that they become ice steel type with
Of
that
course.
variant.
See, if they would have just kept it ice ground or something, I would have been like, oh, okay, I get why they would keep their name.
I think they were afraid. So I honestly think I was recently watching a video talking about the most powerful type combinations in the game, and Ice Ground is literally one of the most powerful type combinations in the game, especially if you're fast. The thing about Sand Slash is he is actually kind of fast, and his ability is Slush Rush, with the Alolan version, which means that in the snow or hail, he gets double speed. So I think they might have had like a fear of him being kind of overpowered if he was ice ground. But my only problem with thoughts like that, right? And I really do think that Game Freak thinks like this sometimes, is that okay, you had that thought, why'd you give megas to legendaries? Like, if you were
Yeah.
worried about like a Sand Slash being overpowered, why would you give a mega to a legendary?
Why would you give Garchomp a mega? Why would you give Salamence a mega? What sense does any of that make? But man, you can't make Sandslash a little bust. You can't make him viable.
You can't make him viable at all. Otherwise, like the world's going to end in Pokemon land.
Yeah, I can't really think of any other ones off the top of my head that I would like a mega for. But I was just looking at some Pokemon from Gen 1. I mean, there's probably some other ones I can't think of off right now, but I just saw Fearow and I was like, that would be really cool if we could get like a mega for Fearow or something along those lines, even a regional variant or whatever.
So I really think that even though Meganium obviously has nothing to do with Gen 6 normally, I really think that Meganium is probably one of my go-to picks right now for
Hmm.
a Pokemon that has a Mega. And it's
Oh yeah,
just because that Pokemon needs love. It just needs love. And I used to use Meganium. When I first played Gen 2, that's what I used was Meganium. And buddy, let me
I'm
tell you,
sorry.
that was like hard mode to the extreme on that game.
Yeah, I think all the starters in Legends ZA are gonna get megas.
Yeah, I
I know
think
some people were saying, oh, they're gonna get regional forms like Legends Arceus. I don't think so. I think they're gonna have their regular final evolutions, and then they're all gonna get megas.
yes, I think that's like so it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't think it's likely that this is going to happen, but it is absolutely possible that they could get regional forms as their final evolution and then also get a mega at the same time. I think that's very possible. I just don't think that that's very likely. Um, so I think that they're just going to be, just like you said, regular Pokemon, regular Meganium, and it's going to have a Mega form. And I'm just hoping that the Mega forms for all three of these Pokemon really buff them up in the ways that they need to be buffed up. And I'm not even talking about like Embor needing like more speed, because a lot of people would be like, "Oh, he needs more speed." I don't really believe that. I think Embor just needs something that changes him in a way that benefits his stats already and that allows him to really play into his niche. Because this is the problem. A lot of people think that the way to solve Pokemon is to just make them all faster and stronger. I don't think so. I think that Pokemon just need to have their own defined niche and role, and then you need to hard press into that.
Right. Because I mean that if all the Pokemon are all the same speed and the same strength, then what's the point of catching any Pokemon?
Yes. And a lot of people complain about like, oh, this bad Pokemon, that bad Pokemon. Notoriously, some of the worst Pokemon in the series I actually like. I like Mawile. I like Sableye. I think that they're fun Pokemon. And I've even used them before in playthroughs. When I played Sword and Shield for the first time, I played with a Mawile and it didn't have a mega, but it was a steel fairy and it did have a changed move set. And I still found a lot of success with it because it had intimidate also. So it still had like a niche. It still had a niche that was valuable. It was still decent on my team. It still performed a good function. And I like that because they kind of like drove into that niche. And that's something that what people don't understand is like Pokemon don't have to all be the same power level. In fact, they shouldn't, because this is not a competitive game. There's a lot of people out there who think of Pokemon as in a competitive mindset because he's playing it competitively through VGC or Smogon or any other tournaments or Showdown or whatever. And it's like, that's really cute. But the game was not designed for that. The game was designed to be a single player RPG, mostly directed towards a younger audience, right?
Yeah. Well, also the fact of Pokemon have to kind of suck. Like, I mean, that's kind of the point. Like, you get Pokemon early on that you use for a little bit, and then you're like, okay, this Pokemon's kind of served its purpose. Oh, wow, look at this cooler Pokemon. Okay, there, I'm going to trade it in. Like, how many people, and I imagine there are people that have done this, but how many people keep Butterfree for a whole playthrough? Like,
It
you're not
can't
going to, not, it's possible. You can, but, why would you?
it cannot be a lot of people, that's for sure.
And that's just the point of, like, not every Pokemon can be top tier, because then that will make the cool Pokemon, the top tier Pokemon, the pseudo legendaries, your legendaries. It won't make them special if every Pokemon is top tier.
Yes, this is the problem of balance. Balance is a difficult thing in video games. I want to eventually cover like a whole topic on my channel of like how games are designed. And one of the things I want to talk about is balance and how that overbalancing is just as bad as underbalancing and can be even worse in some cases because you can balance the fun right out of your franchise. And that's the issue is that I don't want Pokemon to do that. Scarlet and Violet, and again, I'm not just trying to, hate on Scarlet and Violet here because it's not really
Although
the
they deserve although they deserve it.
they do deserve it. I will grant they do deserve it. Anybody who says that Scarlet and Violet's a good game is factually wrong, objectively wrong. You might like it. There's nothing wrong with you liking something that's not a good game, but it's not factually or objectively a good game. It's just not. We're talking about the richest, wealthiest media foundation in existence, corporation in existence that has oodles of money. Nothing else even comes close. You thought Disney came close? Not even a smidge.
Not even close.
Not even close. And,
Especially nowadays.
yeah, especially nowadays. But even in Disney's heyday, like nothing.
Yeah.
The issue is like Pokemon has the money to make a better game, and then they come out with a game that fundamentally does not run on the console it runs on. Oh, that's because the Switch is out of date. Wow. Tears of the Kingdom came out after it.
So if the Switch is out of date, then why did they make the game for the Switch?
They could have waited.
They could have just waited.
They got to be on a
Or
schedule.
optimize the game so that it could work on the Switch. But we're getting off topic. We're getting off topic.
We're getting way
So
off topic.
we're way off topic. I didn't mean to turn this into a hate. It's easy to do that. But
It is very easy to do that. What I was just trying to say was like the
yeah.
balance. The problem is that Scarlet and Violet, and this is not even a problem. This is why I said I'm not trying to hate on Scarlet and Violet. It's not even a Scarlet and Violet problem. It's actually a Game Freak problem. They decided to nerf a bunch of moves that are fun. And then they nerfed like all the healing moves, and then they nerfed like certain things like that. And it's like, why are we doing this? Because it's competitive, because it's difficult to deal with in competitive. Um, that's not this game. Like, what? I, I I could play Scarlet and Violet for 10,000 hours and never once touch competitive because the game isn't fundamentally developed or designed or
I
around it.
I don't think I've ever had a battle with another person in real life ever in any Pokemon game I've ever played.
Oh, that's your guys' experience. That's not our experience. I don't care if it's your
And
experience.
and that's fine. If that's how you want to play Pokemon, that's fine. You can play Pokemon competitively or not. But there's just an objective reality is that most people that play Pokemon, and I'm willing to bet any amount of money on that, most people that play Pokemon do not play competitively.
And have never
They
touched it.
don't. They don't. They might play online with like their friends just to like mess around, try out some moves maybe, but most people I'm willing to bet do not play Pokemon competitively.
Yeah, there's just no
It's
reason to because it's not something inbuilt into the game. Sure, you can
or
do it.
mhm. Or if you want to play, or if like a lot of people that play competitively too, they don't even really play on the Pokemon games. They play on that one PC. What is it, Showdown or whatever?
Yes, it's Showdown.
Showdown. Yeah, that's where most people do competitive and test out move sets and all that. And that's fine. If that that's cool. I'm glad people found that niche. And that's cool. I have no issue with it. But the fact that we should try to cater balancing the game to like at most 2% of the game of the population that play these games, I just think that's really ignorant and very harming to the franchise.
It is very harming. That's what people don't understand. See, in older games, right? So we'll take a look at something that's totally unrelated, but just for a blip
Hmm.
right here. Call of Duty back in Black Ops 2. So we're talking a long time ago in the Stone Age of video games. Well, I guess that wouldn't be the Stone Age. I guess that'd be more like the Bronze Age. But whatever. Regardless, they began the whole league play thing in their game. So that was when competitive first kicked off in Call of Duty in actual in-game settings. So everybody had access to it. How they fixed balance was they just said during when you play this mode, you can't use these guns or these attachments. So if something is a problem in competitive Pokemon, ban that something. Don't nerf it to all get out. An example of this is Darkrai. Darkrai is one of the coolest mythical Pokemon that has ever seen the light of day, or the dark of night, in fact. Um,
Uh,
but his signature move was a type of status move. It was called Dark Void, and he would put you to sleep with 80% accuracy. Now it worked in double battles and such that it would put both the opponents to sleep with 80% accuracy. They nerfed that to 50% because it was too strong in competitive. What? How about just make it so that nobody can use it in competitive? If it's too strong in competitive, oh, that's broken. Putting both the opponent's Pokemon to sleep. Don't- Well, then they don't have to use it. It's not even that difficult of a thing to figure out. Why would you nerf that move to unusability and make it so that the singular good niche that this Pokemon has cannot be used even in game in a solo playthrough? Nobody's going
yeah,
to use it anyway. So this is it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to me that the design philosophy of the video game isn't the problem is with these moves, we're going to take out these moves in competitive. The design philosophy instead is let's nerf these moves into the ground so they can't be used at any point, even in the single player where it literally doesn't matter.
100%, 100%. Um, I don't really know what to add to that, so I'm just gonna go back to talking about Mega Evolutions for a second because I'm looking at a Pokedex for Kalos, and I think a Pokemon that should get a Mega Evolution. I think Charizard should get a third Mega Evolution. Just kidding, but I was looking at some of the legendaries or mythicals that got introduced, and I think Antsy, Hoopa, and Volcanion should all get megas as well.
So Diancie already has a mega,
Oh, yeah,
actually.
you're right. You're right. Dancy does have a mega. You're right. 100%. Okay, then just Hoopa and a Volcanion.
I never knew when I first played Gen 6 that Hoopa had anything to do with Gen 6. I thought Hoopa was a mythical from Gen 7, actually. I never knew it was from Gen 6. I knew Volcanion was from Gen 6, but Volcanion was really weird. I was like, well, why is Volcanion a Gen 6 mythical when like Gen 7 is literally Hawaii? And he's a volcano Pokemon. I actually have a Volcanion, but I don't have a Diancie or a Hoopa. And I think it would be very insanely cool to make those more accessible in this game, just like they did with Darkrai and Shaman and so on and so forth in Legends Arceus.
Yep,
And if all three of them had megas, that would be insanely cool. Diancie's
that would be
mega
awesome.
is so strong. It is so good. And I've never been able to play with it, never been able to use it, and it just kind of saddens me.
I also think Furfrou should get a Mega as well. I'm just kidding. But
I've heard that argument as well.
oh, that's very odd. I just know Furfrou are the rarest Pokemon to trade on what is it called? Pokemon Home, because of the different forms apparently are from different countries. So it's a pain to get them. So that a lot of people like will only trade rare Pokemon for them. So I feel like that's going to go out the window though in this new game. They're probably just going to have you be able to like take Furfrou to a shop and then just change his form. Also, fun fact: this is the first game where Furfrou and Watchog will Legends Z8 will be playable in a Switch game.
That's pretty cool.
I think they're
Um,
the only two Pokemon that haven't been in a Switch game.
yeah, from what I remember, that's the big discussion. They were like, "Oh, Watchog and Furfrou are finally
Which
being unshackled."
they were introduced in Kalos, so it kind of, thematic sense, it makes sense. Game Freak was planning this all along, of course.
Yeah, at least with Furfrou. Watchog was actually, I think, a Gen 5 Pokemon.
Really? Oh, well, color me stupid. But
I think so, but it's been so long, and plus I never actually played through all of Gen 5 in its entirety,
I've
so
I've never played Kalos at all. I know I'm a fake fan, but that's why I'm looking at this. Talonflame, did Talonflame get introduced in Kalos?
yes.
He should most definitely get a Mega then.
Talonflame was the regional bird of Kalos, and it was a huge change up because every regional bird before then was
Flying
flying
normal.
normal.
Yep.
I think except for, well, no, yeah, because there's two regional birds in Gen 3, and one of them's flying water, which is Wingull.
Who? Oh, I don't really count that.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
really
guess you
count
can
that
count
either because
because he's
it's
only two stage. It's kind of like when people say Hoot Hoot is the regional bird of Gen 2. And it's like, I understand what people, because there really isn't a regional bird outside of Pidgey, but it's like, Hoot Hoot only evolves into Noctowl, and that's it. So I don't know. It's kind of a little different for me to like classify that as a regional bird. I mean, it is in the region and it is a bird. So I mean, on a technicality, you're right, but it just doesn't have the same feel to it.
yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. It feels more or less like Hoot Hoot and Pelipper. All of these would be more or less like on the same line as like Spearow and Pharaoh.
Yeah,
They're like
yeah,
set. They're,
100%.
they're like the regional bird light.
Yeah,
But Talonflame
uh,
actually does have three variants
yeah, he
because you
does.
know.
Yeah, Talonflame 100% is the regional bird of that generation. So some regional variants that were introduced in Legends Arceus. What were some of the ones you liked the most? What are ones that surprised you?
So the most surprising one was actually Arcanine. I didn't think I would like it. I thought it looked kind of stupid at first, and then, or not really the Arcanine, but like the Growlithe kind of looked dumb. But I was like, man, this is actually kind of really cool. And then the fact that he's a rock type is kind of
Hmm.
insanely different from what he actually is. But the regional Growlithe is just, he looks majestic. He looks absolutely majestic in that game. And I've never been a Growlithe fan. And I absolutely adored that. I like all of the regional forms for the starters. I think that's a pretty dead giveaway. I think that the regional forms of Hisui did did the whole region justice because what they were is they were all based off of something that was believable in the region. They're not just
Yeah.
ice types in Hawaii.
You just can't let that one go, huh?
I
Um,
really just can't let that one go. It's weird.
so how you are with Arcanine and Growlithe is the way I was with Voltorb and Electorb.
That was
Because I
another one that surprised
because
me.
at first I was like, well, they look like a Pokeball. I'm like, how are they even in this generation? But then they still look like a Pokeball, but they look like the Hisui Pokeballs. And then they gave them a grass typing because they're like carved out of wood. I'm like, bro, Game Freak, when you actually put your mind to something and actually think, like, you guys can be so creative with this.
they cooked so well with that stuff, especially if you really look at like if you look at the design of Voltorb and Electrode in that game. So the cool thing about it is that those two have like they have like a really chipper look to them. Like they're happy, they're joyous. But then when they become man-made, or more man developed, or we
Yeah,
genetically modified them, whatever we did, to
whatever,
become
whatever the whole situation on man-made Pokemon is at this point in the timeline.
whatever it is, it's got to be something like genetic modification or something. They look like angry as all get out, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
blow up on you as all get out.
So if I remember, I still think Electorb, even in Hisui, still looks very angry. I could be misremembering, but I do know Voltorb always looks really happy, and I don't know why. It just is so awesome to see it. I was gonna use the word cute, but that's a word. But I'll just say it. It's a little cute that there's a Voltorb that just has like a big smirk on its face. I don't know. It's really cool. But the Voltorb one really shocked me because I was like, wow, like they actually like put in thought on this. They actually were like, okay, we want to add Voltorb to this game, but we want to make him out of look like a Hisui Pokeball, which the Hisui Pokeballs are like carved out of wood. So what if we made him a grass type, a grass electric type? Good job. Good job.
Definitely a good job on that part. The Hisuian Electrode, you are right, does look angry still. It's the Voltorb. The Voltorb
Yeah.
looks like he's just happy as can be.
He's just chilling. He's just vibing with the world. Um I don't hate any of the regional variants. There are some that I was like, okay, like Sneasel got a regional variant and then got Sneaseler in a new evolution. Cool, that's fine. I didn't. Okay, like Arcanine and Growlithe, I thought that was cool. I guess that's my Gen 1 are coming out. I guess the two Gen 1 Pokemon I just mentioned. um, I'm trying to think of what other Pokemon. Oh, Weirdeer. Weirdeer was really cool. I liked Weirdeer. I liked the new Braviary. I never played with a Braviary before, and I thought Braviary getting the Psychic typing, if I'm not mistaken, that was really cool.
Yeah, so Weirdeer and Braviary were actually my favorites for sure. They were 100% my favorites. And the reason why, and Weirdeer isn't really a regional variant, it's an evolution, but
Oh, yeah, you're right,
it
100%. I apologize.
it's like Basculin and Basculegion. It's still
Yeah.
that's also just an evolution, but still it doesn't really matter because in the grand scheme of things, like Braviary is still very cool as a regional variant, and Weirdeer is probably my favorite new evolution of a Pokemon because Stantler. I've actually liked Stantler for a very long time, and this is probably like a shock to most people because most people would be like, "Well, Stantler, I don't even know who that is." Bad Gen 2 Pokemon, moving on. And it's like Stantler has such an amazing niche in Pokemon Coliseum. So almost every time I play Pokemon Coliseum, at least regularly, I pick up a Stantler because you can use Stantler and then like Granbull and I think Quillfish. I think those are the three intimate. No, I think there is another. Yeah, it's Hitmontop. There's a multitude of intimidate Pokemon, and you can just keep swapping them out and then make the enemy super weak, which is hilarious. And I really like that. I like that it's got some kind of niche. It also has interesting moves, interesting move set. It really makes sense that Weirdeer was a psychic normal type as an evolution to Stantler because Stantler has always, even in Gen 2 when it was released, has always learned psychic type moves. It's very strange, even though it's always been singularly a normal type Pokemon. But Braviary is an insanely cool regional variant because basically Braviary is the American bird. Came from
Yeah.
Gen 5, the American region, definitely gives you bald eagle vibes, feels.
Hmm.
And then they decided, oh, we're going to also make a Braviary, basically an eagle in Hisui. And it fits because it fits the theme of Hisui. It's got like the color schemes and everything like that. And it's just awesome that they did stuff like that. That's why what I was saying was the regional variants of Pokemon really felt like they fit the region.
Yeah. The big one, I can't believe I forgot this, Zora Aura and Zora Arc. I would argue they're cooler than their regular version.
Way cooler. Absolutely. Normal or dark. Wait, what is it? I think it's normal ghost. Yeah,
Their normal ghost in Hisui.
yeah. Normal ghost is very cool because I believe their only weakness is dark, and then everything else they've got a bunch of immunities and a couple of resistances, which is pretty darn cool. I remember looking at that and just going, wow, this blows my mind. We've never had a normal ghost before. And the utility of that, just so cool.
Yeah, other ones to point out that didn't really make an impact for me, Avalug.
Avalug was weird.
All right. Gudra. Okay. Weird that they did this with a pseudo.
They made him.
Lilligant. Lilligant, I've never even played a game with a regular Lilligant, so when they were like, here's Hisui and Lilligant, I was like, okay. Like, I was like, uh, I just was like, oh, that's cool.
So Avalug didn't really improve at all by becoming what he became, like his regional variant. I don't like it. It fits the theme. It's another example of fitting the theme. Sneasler also fits the theme of like the region with at least the way it looks because it's not an ice type. It doesn't need to be an ice type either, but it fits the theme. It's just that it's not something that fits me. I don't really care for either of
Yeah.
those. And so Lilligant, Hisuian Lilligant is actually an insanely good Pokemon. And when I first saw it, I was like, is there even is this like a new Pokemon? Because like the original Lilligant is just it's just not a good Pokemon. Totally passable in every sense of the word. So that's also a very interesting thought there is like, what in the world would you use that for? But the Hisuian Lilligant is insane.
Um, yeah, I never, like I said, the first, I was like, oh, Lilligant, okay, and then you get the boss fight with Lilligant, and I beat it. And I was like, oh, well, I need that, and I caught one, and I used it for a little bit. I never had it like on my team or anything like that full time. But I've never played with a game, played with a Lilligant ever in any game outside of that. So to me, that's like just my Lilligant, I guess. So when I see like a Lilligant in another gym, I'm like, this Lilligant looks so weird.
Yeah, like the
It's
other
kind of
one's
like
the
when
regional variant.
it's kind of like what I was telling you the other day, where it's been so long since I've played with a regular Zigzagoon in a game. When I was watching your video playing Pokemon Coliseum, I was like, why does Zigzagoon look so weird? And I was like, oh, duh, that's regular Zigzagoon. It's not. I'm used to Galarian Zigzagoon.
That's so funny because it's just the opposite for me. I played even recently. I played Gen 3 so many times that in all of its various different ways, like Coliseum XD, Emerald, so on and so forth. I played Gen 3 in so many different ways that whenever I see Galarian, I'm like, man, this thing looks so weird.
Um, so we kind of teased it a little bit earlier, but we got a lot of new evolutions for Pokemon that didn't get much love. We'll say. Uh, I'll start off by saying I think Basculegion is probably one of the coolest like evolution types, or one of the newer evolutions they added to the game. The fact that he's like a ghost fish, and it's the whole point of it is it's like the screaming souls of all the Basculin that died or whatever. They merged into a Basculin to become a Basculegion. I just think that's really awesome.
So the lore behind that goes even further than that. I really love it. So you know how salmon they try to swim upstream, and many of them die to swimming upstream because what they're trying to do is they're swimming upstream to mate, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the issue is Basculegion is just that too. They're swimming upstream, and the dead souls of the male ones become the male Basculegion, and the dead souls of the female one become the female Basculegion. Um, the ones that failed their swim upstream when they try to go up to and mate.
That's really sad. But Yeah, that's actually really cool though. I knew it was something along. I didn't know like that specific example, but I knew it was like that. But I just thought Basculegion was so cool, and I'm just gonna point it out there. Come on, Cleavor is awesome.
Cleavor is amazing. It's weird. It's weird, right? Because you've got Scizor, Scythor, or Scyther. I guess I said that wrong. Scyther and Cleavor, and all three of them have the same base stat total, but just separately
Hmm.
distributed, differently distributed, and different typing combinations. And somehow they all three work. And it's just, man, I'll tell you what, Cleavor is probably one of the coolest bug types they've ever made. Just the idea, it's so weird too, because you would look at him and you'd be like, wow, this is kind of just weird. What even is this? It doesn't really look like a bug straight off rip, but then you have to like suspend your disbelief for a second, go back in time and realize that neither does Scyther really look like a bug. I mean, it's also like taller than a person in some cases. So the issue is like they're taking the design of Scyther and changing it to Cleavor. So you have to take that
Yeah,
with like the backdrop. And when you do that, you look at Cleavor and you're like, wow, this is just kind of genius. So he's an old school version of Scissor. So we're talking about like more Stone Agey kind of a feel
hmm,
here, and therefore it makes sense why instead of having giant scythes or giant claws and made out of metal and so on and so forth or whatever, he's made out of rock and his weapons are made out of rock. And that's just so cool.
that is super cool. I had a Scythor, a Scizor, and a Cleavor all on my team throughout most of that game.
That's some pretty good dedication. I had most of the trade evolution Pokemon in most of my team the entire way because that's another thing that Legends Arceus did better than any other Pokemon game to this date is that you could get trade evolution Pokemon without trading.
I
And
know.
I think that this is such a dumb thing that this has not been the case since the beginning. I think trade evolution Pokemon should have always been accessible in game through a trade with a person in game, if you couldn't reach them by trading with other people. And they could have just made them late game pickups or even post game pickups. I would like that rather than never being able to use the Pokemon ever regardless. So so the issue is like in this game you could play with all of them the moment that you got the trading cable, I think it was called.
Yep, the link cable.
The link cable. It literally their held item that allows them to evolve is called the link cable in a old old timey thousands of years old taken place in video game, and that's just so hilarious that that's what they decided to do. I love the
Well,
nod.
well, actually, you could argue that it could be in that time period though, because of the paradox stuff going on, the timey wimey nonsense going on in the game.
That's completely
So
true.
maybe they found the link cables there. But I loved the link cable. I remember when I first discovered it, I was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, these are all trading." Which in that game, any sort of trading item, you don't actually have to trade. You just got to give it. So like the I forgot the thing to evolve. Like if you get by Iron Coat, you just give it to Scyther and he turns into Scizor. You don't have to trade Scizor. But like, oh, you want a Gengar and Alakazam? Well, there you go. Go get a link cable from the lady in Jubilife Town and just put it on there. And that was the first game I've ever had a Gengar and an Alakazam.
If
And
I
I've
were,
been playing since Gen 1. So it's
yeah,
been a long time. I never had friends to trade with.
yeah, the same thing was for me. It's weird too because I actually had brothers who played the games, and we never did that. I never even knew about trade evolutions until they were out of the games, so I didn't no
Hmm.
longer have them to trade with. So that's kind of wild. I could have had Gen 1, 2, and 3 trade evolutions back in the day. We just never knew about it back in the day. And then, like, if I were to ever do a playthrough or a let's play or anything of Legends Arceus, which, could happen one of these days, I would 1000% my entire team would be nothing but trade evolution Pokemon. It would be like Scyther or not Scyther, Scizor, Gengar, Machamp, Golem, all those Pokemon because I just think that they're really cool. I think that they're very good Pokemon. They're not totally necessary. Usually their pre-evolved form right before them, it can be used enough, like effectively enough that it's okay.
Yeah.
But you want the final. You want the best form of the Pokemon. And
Right.
that's just like that's just like a no-brainer. Like
No,
you could
no one
even
says no one says abracadabra and then just stops. You say alakazam, okay?
you have to. It's like Rhydon, Rhyhorn, Rhydon, and Rhyperior. You have to say that.
Um, Another Pokemon that I actually never got in the game because it was way too complicated and it took way too much time is Ursaluna. I don't know. Did you ever get an Ursaluna?
Oh man, I did. That was kind of like a very grueling process. That was one of the last things I did do, and it was one of the reasons why I stopped with the Pokédex in Legends Arceus, which is kind of a bit of a shame because eventually you could go and fight the final boss battle and get yourself a pretty exclusive Pokemon that you can't really get pretty much anywhere else. And I never got that Pokemon, at least in that game. It's just kind of a sad shame.
Uh, yeah. So what Pokemon are you alluding to here?
That would be good old Arceus, because
What?
Legends Arceus, no fooling, is all about that Pokemon. I think it's pretty, you know, spoiler free. I don't think you could possibly say that that's a spoiler. For one, we're talking about a game that's several years old at this point right
Hmm.
now.
In Legends Arceus, you catch Arceus. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought Legends Arceus, you would catch an Arceus? But the problem with Arceus is that one thing I did, but also didn't like about the game as a whole was the Pokédex system. I think the Pokédex system was very cool. It had a lot of really cool facets to it. How you had to basically discover like what your Pokemon were capable of doing in the wild, discover traits about them, use moves with them, so on and so forth. That was cool, but after you do it a couple hundred times, it becomes extremely tedious. And there comes a
Yes.
point where if you only need a few Pokemon left, they're typically the Pokemon that are the hardest to get. And even when you get them, they're the hardest to use, or this, that, or the other, blah, blah, blah. And there's probably like 10 or 15 Pokemon I have left to get before I'm fully finished. Everybody else is completed in the Pokédex. And you have to fully complete the Pokédex before you can go and get Arceus. And I find that to be like a huge miss. I don't think that that should have been handled that way. Maybe like a
And
certain completion level, but I don't
mhm.
think it should have been full.
And I heard the boss battle with Arceus is very challenging.
I heard that too. I heard that it's actually a very good like challenge to reward kind of thing because obviously you're doing it with the intent of getting there. So of course you're like, I'm going full hog on the Pokédex. You get the Pokédex, you finally get there, you fight him. He's an extremely hard fight, and then the reward for it is you get the best Pokemon pretty much in existence. And that's I think it's cool. I think it's worth it. I just think that there are some misses in Arceus that I'm hoping that they do kind of expound upon or do better with in ZA. One of those being is like the the boss battles. The boss Pokemon that you get in Arceus are not different from regular Pokemon after you catch them. And I
Hmm.
find that to be really weird. Why do they have this golden glow that disappears, never comes back? They don't have any form or power or function that has that. It's sort of like with the super giant Pokemon, the apex Pokemon. Some of those Pokemon don't retain their size after you catch them. They're not as big.
Hmm. That's interesting. I never had that issue.
I think it's just like the super big ones. Like for instance, a good example of this is the boss Hisuian Avalugg fight.
Oh yeah.
He is gigantic.
Yeah, he's
And
like a mountain. He's literally a mountain.
yes, and then when you catch him, he's no longer that. I think the Apex Pokemon actually stay the same size. What I'm thinking about is actually Scarlet and Violet with their Titans. The Titans,
Yeah.
those don't look any different from the regular Pokemon. So it's like, well, but they were
Well, I
giant when I
mean,
caught them.
that game's just a slap in the face to humanity. But but anyways, uh, but yeah, I agree. I don't know, and I got to be honest. If we're gonna get into like, if we're gonna kind of, I'll gonna go off the Arceus thing here though, real quick. Is I didn't ever get to that fight because I never even came close to completing the Pokédex. I really hope that in Legends ZA they just say you catch the Pokemon. All right, Pokédex completed for that Pokemon, because some of that stuff you had to do was just awful.
It
Oh,
was.
use this move 35 times in strong style. Oh, make a Cleffa eat 28 Pika berries. I'm like, I'm gonna Pika myself off of the cliff. So if I have to do this again. But Arceus was so cool, and it's the first time because you can actually rematch him, and he has a chance of being shiny. And it's the first time that I think it's actually the only time Arceus has ever been able to be shiny.
Yes, in a video game to be caught. Now, there was one event in the past where you could get a legitimate shiny Arceus. There was only, I think, like 1,000 of them distributed. Um,
So your
and
chances are good at getting that. Yeah.
yeah, your chances are very good at getting that. However, this is the first legitimate opportunity to get an Arceus shiny from a catch from a boss battle. Now, of course, it's kind of like a bit arduous. I think I would never shiny hunt an Arceus in that game.
Yeah. I mean, I could if the boss battle is like as challenging as people have said it is. I couldn't imagine trying to do that like a million times. Like, I mean, I don't know if he appears shiny like before the fight. Like, you can save right in front of him and then just kind of shiny like that. I don't know if that's how that works, but I just couldn't imagine going through that process. Although this is the game too, Legends Arceus, a little off tangent here. The first game I ever caught a shiny Pokemon that wasn't the Red Gyarados at the Lake of Outrage.
Well, that's
It was
pretty
a
cool.
shiny Blez, and it was a shiny Bwezzle. First time I ever caught a shiny Bwezzle. Now there is a side mission where you catch a shiny Ponyta, but I'm not counting that because that's guaranteed.
Yeah,
But
the first time I ever caught a legitimate shiny in Pokemon, and we're talking I've played Pokemon since Gen 3 consistently. Now, there's been a couple of times I've missed, but for the most part, like I played consistently. I've not played Gen 7 and I've not played Gen parts of Gen 4 and parts of Gen 5, but most of it I have played. So the issue is like I played pretty consistently, and this is the first time I found a shiny Pokemon was actually in Gen 8. I found a shiny Miltank. Made me very sad because it's even girlier than it already looks because it's all pink and stuff. That
roll out.
roll out is for sure. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm gonna keep it because it was my first legitimate shiny, but it was not a shiny I would want. That's for sure.
Well, so I actually got the shiny Bwezzle because one of the earlier side missions in Legends Arceus is you have to catch a Bwezzle that's like a certain height or whatever for this guy, and so I literally was just out there catching all the Bwezzles and or Bweezles. I don't know how people pronounce it. I'm gonna keep saying Bwezzle, and I keep catching them, and then he's like, "Oh no, this isn't tall enough."
This
And I
isn't
think, and then he's like, "This one isn't tall enough. Just take the Buizel, please. Just please. I'm tired of catching these things." And then it was like mass outbreak, Buizels, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." And I was just running around chucking, and then I saw the little ding, the shiny spark, and I was like, "Oh!" I mean, it really didn't look that cool. It didn't, but it was just cool that I've never seen a shiny in the wild.
Yeah, I think that some Pokemon clearly see you can clearly see effort put into their shiny, like shiny Rayquaza. Shiny Rayquaza looks like they were like, how can we make the most baddest Pokemon ever look even more bad? And that's what I see when I see shiny Rayquaza. But some shinies are like, this looks like somebody put on like the 3D glasses in the movie theater and started using colors that they couldn't see.
So I had what was it? I had a shiny ball toy, that I caught in Pokemon Sword, and the only thing that changed was his skin became like a little brighter, and the red on him or the pink on him turned green. And I was like, okay, that's whatever. No, Claydol though was worse. His eyes just go from red to orange. That's it. That's the only thing that changes on Claydol.
That's so weird. I'm telling you, some of the shinies just look really lazy. Like they couldn't think of anything to make this Pokemon a little bit more interesting. They could have
I
turned
just,
Claydol into like a sandy color because
yeah,
he's, a clay doll, a pot.
yeah. Well, I think he's supposed to be a Dreidel from because he spins.
Yes, he is a Dreidel.
So he should just have like Hebrew written or something.
Something like that. I'm sure
But
that would go by with the Pharisees.
who's also a Pokemon Pharaoh Seed.
Oh my gosh. And then they renamed that Pokemon to Ferocide because they didn't
Of
want to
course,
offend people.
of course, of course.
You,
But
you have to pronounce it like that now, from now on.
I'm
Ferocide.
I'm not gonna say the name, but there's one Pokemon that we say the name very wrong for sometimes because of the history of that Pokemon. That's utter nonsense because it's just ridiculous that they couldn't figure that out. But
Oh my gosh.
I so let's kind of try to wrap up our conversation here about Legends Arceus. Is there any last minute thoughts you want to talk about with this game?
So with Legends Arceus, I think that it was a great step forward for Pokemon, and I really do think that if Game Freak takes the design philosophies of Legends Arceus, the story, the gameplay, the catching elements, even like the distinct zones that are
Hmm.
free roaming, but also distinct from one another, you can't really like enter one another. I think they have a good basis. I don't necessarily think they're going to do that exactly for ZA. I think it's going to be more open, but I think that's fine as long as they do it well. And I really think that if they do their best to emulate the good things about Legends Arceus, I think ZA has a really good shot.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff we didn't cover. I mean, like Cynthia's ancestor, I can't remember his name. He's probably like one of the hardest trainer battles in a Pokemon game, period. Especially because you fight his team of six, and then you beat him, and then he's like, "Oh, we're not done. Here's a Giratina, by the way. Uh,
Yeah, we're not done.
we're not done, and you don't have time to heal either. So good luck." But like the game just brought that like sense of mythology to Pokemon. The mythology to Dialga, Palkia, Arceus. It really added like a myth, like almost like the name Legends. It added a legend to them. Or even like Pokemon like Manphy and some of the other Pokemon that you have to like do weird puzzles for to get them. And it really brought back like that old school mentality of legendary Pokemon. And I really liked that. There really isn't much I don't like about this game outside of the Pokédex, how to complete it. I think that just was Game Freak just saying, "Oh, we're gonna make you waste as much time in this game as possible."
Yeah,
Um,
it's a bit too tedious. It's a bit too drawn out, and it shouldn't be necessary. It should be like you get rewards for doing it, but as long as you've
right.
caught the Pokemon, that counts.
Like it'd be cool if they just gave you like an experience boost or something, like for that Pokemon. Like, oh, you did 20 moves of this. Oh, here's 1,000 experience. Woo. Um, and I'm very excited for what ZA could potentially offer if it follows in the directions of Legends Arceus.
Yes. So after ZA releases, we're definitely going to have to come back and talk more about ZA, like what actually occurred, because I know that this video, some people are going to probably listen to this podcast and think, man, you guys didn't really go over a lot of ZA. So the problem is that ZA doesn't really have a lot to it. The only things that we know about ZA is that Megas are coming back. It's in Kalos.
Hmm.
It's going to be open world. We've already discussed pretty much all of these things. It's going to have a interesting set of starters, as well as you're going to be able to. This is the only major thing that ZA is doing that we did not talk about, and that is the ability to like dodge moves.
Oh yeah, the freeform combat. I mean, we could talk about that if you want.
Yeah, the freeform combat is pretty much the only thing we didn't really discuss, and I think that that's another instance of yes, Game Freak, please do this. My only issue with it, now this is kind of like a minor critique, and it's more like an artistic style because Game Freak has been doing this as of late, but it means that the moves have to be less big and less impactful. So if you use a flamethrower, it can't be like this big projectile of fiery stream because the issue is like how are you dodging that? So so I think to some degree it could be kind of like a hindrance for like the art style, but I think it's going to be a plus for the battling no matter what because giving you agency in the Pokemon battle more than just random chance or more than just like, oh, I got a crit. Well, what made you get a crit? Uh, RNG.
Yeah. Uh, honestly, so and then the fact too is it's very interesting because the moves are going to be on cooldowns now. So like when you use flamethrower, if you miss it, you got to wait for it to cool down. So I'm really interested in that aspect. It almost creates like a oh man, like I better make sure this move hit. You're actually going to have to learn like the distance of your moves, anything like that. Like I mean, in the trailer it showed them use what is it, spikes or whatever, toxic spikes or something, but they used it as a way to counter a move. And I thought that was like really cool. Like it's almost like you got to find certain timing for moves. So now like status moves can have a whole new meaning to them.
Hmm. See, that's just a very interesting concept. The ability of being able to use a move like Toxic Spikes, for instance, to counter another move, or to use a move for countering, not just protect. Because basically, the only way to counter a move in current Pokemon is to use something like Protect, where
Mhm.
you defend yourself from it, or to use like a move like Mirror Coat or Counter that actually, counter the move. But other than that, there's not really much interaction between moves. It's you use a move, your enemy uses a move. And I think there is some room, right? There is some room for change in that manner to make it such that like we've got more options. And it's why I really appreciate the battle system being changed. It's why I really appreciated the catching system being changed in Legends Arceus. And I think that these things need to continue. I think
Uh,
we need to have good change.
and for the record, I'm totally okay with the battle system being a one-off to this game because I don't ever think Pokemon should turn its back on uh, turn-based battles because I think Pokemon has always been and should always be baby's first RPG, uh, where
I
it's like a very
I
simple
agree.
RPG to get into. I'm very excited though for the new battle system. I just think that there are elements like the capture system, the open world capture system, stuff like that. I think should there's no reason why it can't be in game to game, especially in all these Pokemon games where it's just open world anyways. Like why can't we just capture them? And another new feature though added in ZA is the tower system or the ranking system, where at night you can enter like a tournament and you rank from Z to A. What are your thoughts on that?
It kind of sounds, and forgive my 2015 for you, but it kind of sounds like they're trying to make Pokemon Battle Royale. That's what it sounded like. And I don't know if there's going to be like an online structure to this, like where you can play with other people and all do it at once. If it can be done that way, I really think that this is like their version of Battle Royale, at least to some somewhat minor, closely related kind of way. I really think they're trying to do that. Hilarious side note, I actually thought when I first saw Breath of the Wild that that was going to have a battle royale mode because I was like,
I
oh,
can
open
you only
world.
imagine.
I was like, open world Zelda where the weapons break, they have limited use. I was like, this kind of seems like it's set up for that. Now I'll be honest, I'm very glad they didn't do that. I'm not saying they should have did that. I'm very glad they did not. But it's just one of these things where I could see potentially this like tournament not necessarily being a battle royale against each other. That's not what I'm saying. But I could see it being something functionally like that in
Mhm.
the series. I'm not so opposed to that necessarily if it was, as the tournament suggests, you're just battling for higher ranks, so on and so forth, and it's just for fun. Um, I think that that's
So
fine.
yeah. So in the trailer, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a version of it. If there is a multiplayer version of it, I do think it's going to be separate because they do say in the trailer that when you get to rank A, you do get granted a wish, and I think that's going to be for some story purpose in the game. Maybe like a Mega Stone for a legendary Pokemon or something like that. I feel like there's going to be some story reason to get up to A that we just don't know yet. And I also think that's going to be their way of kind of getting around gym battles
Hmm.
because I very much doubt, especially with the fact that the whole game takes place in just Lumio City. I don't think we're going to get gym battles.
Yeah, there's actually kind of so the gym battle thing isn't really that big a deal because Legends Arceus did not have anything of the sort. The closest thing we had were the boss battles with the Pokemon, which is not a gym battle, right? Um, so that doesn't really matter to me so much that there's not gym battles, but I have thought a lot about like how are they going to do Lumio City and only Lumio City. And then you'll see people argue online of, well, they never said it's not going to include the outskirts of Lumio City. But yes, they did basically say that. It's not including suburbs and outskirts and other cities that are kind of close or near or whatever.
Hmm.
None of that's the case. It's only Lumio City. I've thought about like what if they go underground or what if you can go up in the sky? What if there's like this, that, or the other, blah blah blah. I don't know how exactly they would function that. And then like obviously if they wanted to make the game have any kind of reasonable believability, most of the buildings have to be different. You have to be able to go into them because we're talking about a very scaled down Pokemon game. The size of this game is not going to be that big if it's just Lumio City, even if it is the whole of Lumio City, because it's still just one place. I think
I feel like they're going to greatly expand Lumio City. I think if you take the maps, I think this game will be in size comparison to Legends Arceus.
Oh, I think so too. I think it's going to probably be in size comparison to Legends Arceus. I don't think it's going to be in the same scale in the sense because like obviously we're not going to be scaling mountains or anything of the sort,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it is going to be the same or similar size because if you look at Legends Arceus, basically you have a hub world surrounded by a circle of zones, and that's kind of just what could be going on with Lumio City. I don't think the
I think
hub
that
is going to be the center though.
I think. Well, I don't think the hub. I think the hub is going to be the hotel where AZ works at, and
That's
then
a
I
good.
think when you leave the hotel, I think then you'll travel to whatever hub or whatever part of the city you want to go. Um, with it being set in or based on France, I just think Paris, France specifically. I think it would be cool if there is an underground area that's similar to the catacombs in France, where maybe that's where like a legendary Pokemon could be, or because I just find it really odd if there are going to be legend. Because like I said, we have no proof that any like Zygarde or Yveltal are going to be, or not Zygarde. Zygarde's clearly in the game. Yveltal or Xerneas are in the game, but if they are, I'm just curious where they are in the game.
So I have a bit of a thought behind that, and my thought is that Zygarde should, if we were going to include like areas around Lumios, I think that Zygarde should be the underneath, somewhere in the catacombs kind of thing. If we were going to do catacombs, and I think like there should be like a forest on the outskirts of Lumios that you can get to eventually, and that should be where Xerneas is. And then
Hmm.
maybe there's uh like a dead grove where Yveltal is on the other side of
Mm.
Lumios or something like that. I know it sounds kind of a bit weird, but the issue is I just don't fundamentally understand how they're going to justify where the legendaries are coming from if we're stuck in Lumios. There has to be something. They can't just be in a building. They literally
So,
just can't be in a building. That's so weird.
so, so a big image used in a lot of the trailers is Zygarde in his dog form. I don't know what percent that is. And part of me is starting to think that maybe you catch him in that form, and then kind of like I oh God, I'm getting Vietnam flashbacks about to say this one. Kind of like the purple fire to get Spiritomb in Legends Arceus. I feel like you'll probably go around and collect Zygarde cells, and then that's what will get you to Zygarde. But I don't know about that 100% because I feel like Zygarde is going to play an important role in the story. So
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sold on my own idea, and I honestly I hope that idea isn't true because I gave up after like 20 of those Spiritomb fire things. I was like, I don't even care about Spiritomb that much.
and I
But
believe there was 108 of those, right?
yeah, it was something like that. It was too many, and
It,
you can only see them at night. And you can only see them at night.
oh my gosh, don't, oh man, don't remind me. I don't even remember if I got Spiritomb in that. So the Zygarde cells made a lot of sense for Alola because that's where they existed in. They made sense for that game because Zygarde wasn't a part of that game, so they wanted to basically give you like a fetch quest for a main legendary.
Mm.
They don't make sense in a game where the game is all about Zygarde.
So what if? And I'm just obviously all spitballing here, just trying to like make sense of this. Uh, what if the story starts out with Zygarde in his complete form being experimented on by this new organization that we see? I can't remember the name of them in the ZA trailers. What if they're experimenting on Zygarde and then like something goes wrong and he just goes and just blows up into like a million cells? And so that's why you have to find them or something along those lines.
I think something like that is actually kind of possible. And
And
then
that's why he's in the city limits.
And also another thought, and this could be like a separate theory behind why there's like the Zygarde stuff, is is also like maybe he's not in his full form, and in order, or maybe like he can reach it, he just refuses to, and then like you get the cells to get like his Mega Stone, because we don't know exactly how like Zygarde, Yveltal, and Xerneas are going to mega evolve necessarily. They don't even need a stone because you take a look at Rayquaza. Rayquaza doesn't need a stone. It just needs to learn a move to mega evolve, which is pretty crazy. And then you got like Groudon and Kyogre. They don't need a mega stone and they don't mega evolve. They primal revert
Hmm.
using an item, but it's not using the blue or red orb, but it has nothing to
Yeah.
do with mega evolution per se.
Mm.
So I think there's some potential there. There's some potential for those to still be useful, but I think that if you have to do like find all the pieces in order to actually get to Zygarde, it's like that's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. Because I do feel like he's going to be like the main catalyst of the story. Because I mean, when the game first, like, when you first saw the name, they focused on Pokemon Legends Z, and then they added the hyphen A. So, but they focus on the Z, and the Z is the same color scheme as Zygarde.
Yeah, it's the
The
exact
ZA
same.
is the same color. So, I mean, clearly he's going to play some role in the story. So it would be kind of weird if like he plays a role in the story, but you also have to like go around and collect his pieces if it's as if it's like a side collectible or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. I think it would be okay as long as like the collectibles are something that powers him up or whatever, or
Yeah.
like gives him access to his mega evolution or something of that sort. I just don't think it's okay if like the only way we're getting Zygarde is if we first collect all these pieces. It would kind of make sense maybe if like you have to collect them to then like be able to earn his trust or something. They could do something interesting with the story. That's what I'm trying to say here. They could do something
Yeah.
interesting with the story that would make it make sense. At this current moment, it does not make sense to me.
No. And we got that Pokemon Presents in July. Uh so hopefully we get something of substantial news shown about that. And then the game comes out in October.
Yeah, hopefully something. Hopefully something. But with all that being said, this has been mine and Luffyzilla's podcast. all about Legends Arceus and our speculation concerning Legends ZA up and coming. So I want to thank you all for joining me. If you like my content, please upvote and follow, or like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. And I want to thank you, Luffyzilla, for joining me on yet another adventure into discussion on the webs.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I always love doing these videos with you. Fun. I'm very excited for Legends ZA. I can't wait. Love Legends Arceus, like I said at the top of the video, my favorite Pokemon game. So I'm going to be very interested to see what people have to say in the comments
I,
about what they speculate or what maybe they hate Legends Arceus and they don't like any of the new. I'm interested to read all that.
I'm interested too. I really hope that we do get at least some engagement talking about like likes and dislikes and maybe like criticisms about the video, our discussion, the games. There's not everybody likes Legends Arceus, and I don't think everybody's going to like Legends ZA, but I think more people are favorable towards ZA than even Arceus, and the reason being is just because that Mega Evolution is coming back. I'm excited for it. I think Arceus is an amazing game, and I think ZA has potential, and I really do hope that it lives up to its potential because that's the problem is if it flops, if the potential just falls to the ground, it could be a serious issue. We will see you all next time.